Hey, kia ora koutou whānau. Chewy, my friend. Good evening to you, sir.
Hello. What a day. What a day it's been.
What a day it's been. It's been a lovely day, and a day it has been. I'm a little bit annoyed with Te Pāti Māori, to be honest. All of their protests seem to be organised in the North Island, although some lively locals did some ones in the South Island, but I don't think official ones, just kind of supportive ones. So what about us? What about us, Debbie? When are you coming down to see us? Sheesh.
Some pretty big numbers in Christchurch on the looks of it.
I saw that on the news tonight.
Good on them. Yep.
How is everybody? Everyone good? You all happy? Did you all bring a friend tonight? Hope you all brought a friend tonight, because you know that's how we roll. Bring a friend, share the love. Yeah, lots going on tonight. We'll have a look at Debbie Ngawera-Packer eating Shane Jones's lunch in front of him on breakfast this morning and going, nom, 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 nom. Also, we'll have a little bit of look at what's going on with the protests and what they were all about and why they happened and where they were. And also, the fair pay agreement leak yesterday. It's quite interesting. I didn't watch heaps all of TVNZ coverage. I kind of watched the first 20 minutes and I cut out. Tell me if I'm wrong, chat, and there will be someone who has watched it. Did they talk about that at all on TVNZ? The leaked cabinet paper? Because I didn't see them on TVNZ talk about it, but it was kind of part 2 on Newshub, and they went a bit further. And what's happened, Chewy, and we'll talk about more about this later, is what you expect to happen is like what you see happen in American politics when the Republicans get caught out. They've started the conversation and the narrative on where the leaks come from, rather than the content of the document. And for me, the content of the document, I mean, I'm not saying you want to have your nation's secrets out to anybody, but in this instance, the content of the document to me feels more important than how the leak got out there. But this is what I guess all political parties do, left and right. They kind of start going, well, that should never have been released. But what about talking about what was in it? No, but it should never have been out there to talk about. So that's what they're doing now. What else, sir? How you been?
I've been pretty good. I've just found a picture from the Christchurch protests, actually. That looks like
cool.
Pretty decent numbers.
Yeah.
And I just want to say, after watching so many fucking racist, weirdo, anti-vax, MAGA, neo-Nazis do rallies on the Bridge of Remembrance in Christchurch, it's good to see someone that's not them.
Yeah.
They should hold that ground.
There you go. Maybe they should set up like a village around it and live there for 82 days or whatever it's supposed to be, and start planting weed and let it grow like they did at the How's Your Father. Okay, team. Let me just rip off by saying something super quick. You guys all know this. This is our last week for merch. I'm not going to bang on about this because I know that most of you got in last week who wanted to get merch. But just a very quick reminder: bhnshop.nz. We've taken off the Christmas top, because I was concerned it wouldn't get to you in time. I've got 2 boxes of merch that I picked up today, and tomorrow me and my 17-year-old are going to be sitting down and trying to get all of them on the courier by the end of the day, maybe Wednesday morning at the latest. So we'll go through it as quick as we can. It might take us longer than that. I might have to do some tomorrow and some the next day, but we've got it from last week's orders, and we're going to get it on the courier as quickly as we possibly can. I still think that these shirts will probably still get to you before Christmas, but all I've said is I don't want people expecting them before Christmas in case there's a hold up in that. So, so if you order this week, I'm just saying, look, we're not gonna guarantee it, but I still think there's a better than average chance that they'll get there. So you've got the #1 Swaziland podcast. And you've got #1 podcast in Swaziland tops. You've also got To Those With Power, Equality Feels Like Oppression hoodies, and t-shirts, and of course the BHN merch in general, which is the BHN hoodie and t-shirt with the OB on the back. And of course, as I've told you before, the OB won't be getting sold again after this Friday morning. So if you want to have a little something that says I was there from the beginning, then you need to get the OB gear, and that's at bhnshop.nz. We won't bang on about it because, as I said, I think most of you probably got it last week. That's why we've got these boxes to go through tomorrow. But if anyone missed out or anyone still wants to get it, then last chance is this week. Chewy, sir, I have some news.
News on this show?
We have been included in an Official Information Act request by a member of the public.
Oh, okay.
So for those people who are writing in the chat that didn't know what OIA was, the Official Information Act basically gives the public, and it's probably more often than not used by the media, to get access to information from a government department, minister, or MP that they have the right to see, which is quite a lot because they're, they're state entities, or they're, public servants or whatever. So I received an email this morning, and I'll show you the email. I've obviously taken off all the information as to show who it's from. So I'm not doxing anyone here. This is just from TVNZ to me. And it says this, kia ora, Pat. They'll have to go soon. Hey, under Simeon Brown, you won't be able to say kia ora anymore, TVNZ. TVNZ has received an Official Information Act request in relation to the copyright issues with TVNZ's debates. Among other things, the requester has asked for all correspondence and documents that relate to your channels, to our channels. We're obliged to comply with our obligations under the Act, and attached correspondence with you, or your correspondence with YouTube that was then sent to us. So I was talking to YouTube as well. YouTube then sent that stuff to TVNZ, so they have to hand that over as well, which was then sent to us. Is in scope of the request. We intend to release it to the requester, removing your mobile phone number and physical address where those were included, because we don't consider it to be legally privileged or consider that any other of the other withholding grounds apply. Please let us know if you have any comments, yada, 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 blah, blah, blah. To which I went through all the documents and had a look through. They hadn't redacted my email address. I'm just like, well, if you could just redact my email address, that would be good, because there's no need. But straight away I was like, oh shit, what have I said? What have I said? What's going on? What have I said, Joey? What have I said? So I actually had to flick back through the emails between me and TVNZ. It's so boring. Whatever somebody's looking for, they're going to find nothing. It's me saying to TVNZ first, you guys have fucked up. I don't think I said fucked up because I was trying to be respectful. We have the fair use rights, yada, yada, yada. And them coming back to me going, well, we don't agree with you. And me going back to them, so, well, what can we do? And me going back to them going, let's figure this out. And them coming back to me going, oh, well, how about we do this, 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 and this? Like we talked all that through. And I said, okay, I'll do that. Now sort it out. Day later, it's not sorted out yet. Have you sorted it out? A day later, I really need this up and it's sorted out. It's not particularly interesting. So when I replied to them, I also said, could you tell me who it is? Because I was guessing one of two individuals. I think people in the chat have already suggested at least one of those individuals that I thought it could be as well. But they came back to me, and I've taken off all the other information, so this is not going to give anyone any. But they just said to me, the requester is not a group or a journalist. So it's not a group like, I'm not saying it would be, but like NZME or whatever, or the Herald or a journalist. The Privacy Act prevents us providing the requester's information to you without their consent. So we ask the individual if we're able to provide their name to you, and we'll let you know once we have a response. If they decline, we will let you know the steps. So the people that I thought it would be, which some have mentioned in the chat already, I don't think it is. So I know maybe it's someone who actually just wants to have a look at what TVNZ's up to, rather, because straight away, I guess maybe I'm being a little bit arrogant here. I thought, oh, are they trying to embarrass us or something? But maybe it's just more some grumpy humanist who wants to look at how TVNZ operates. Maybe it's someone who thinks that we should be able to, live stream the debates, and don't know, don't care. Nothing in there too bad that's going to get out.
It's just interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting, eh? I think that's very interesting. So, and it's a first for me. I've never done an OIA request, nor have I been involved. Maybe I have been involved in one without knowing. When you work in mainstream media, you probably are involved in them. People ask for stuff, but yeah. So I don't know. I don't it's interesting. That's what it is. It's interesting, and it's kind of pointless. They're not going to discover anything. TVNZ said at the time, we believe this is how the law applies. I said, I've had advice, which I did. It was casual advice from a lawyer. It wasn't employed advice. That says the opposite. And then both of us coming to an agreement, them saying, if you promise not to live stream the last 2 debates or the last debate, then we'll release the strikes. And me going, okay, then I promise. And then going, come on, I've held up my end. Where's yours? Come on, guys. That's it. So yeah, it's less exciting than perhaps I wish it had have been, but it is what it is. Just before we get into like real news, that wasn't really news. That was the family meeting we were talking about. I want to say a big thanks to our patrons. Love you guys to bits. Thank you so much for being on board. We have now, I think, officially over 100. I think that includes non-paying patrons. If you're a non-paying patron, I'm happy for you to lurk, but to be honest with you, you're not going to get any benefits out of it. Because anytime we do something or put up a clip or invite people, it's always to the paid patrons. Now, I'm not saying that to force you to become a paid patron. You guys fill your boots, do it as you want. But I'm just telling you, maybe other than being able to connect with us, I don't really see much of a reason to be a non-paying patron. But I still appreciate you guys wanting to support us and be involved and see what we're up to. But maybe once in a while, I'll throw a bone to the people who can't afford it, which is fine. You know, we'll go through stages. But there are our beautiful patrons. We love you to bits, and you'd certainly help us pay the odd bill here and there. It's genuinely helpful. All right, Chewy. Oh look, I've just got some stuff coming up from Patreon over on my messages. What are we doing, sir? Are we just getting into the news? Are you going to tangent us already and send us to do a 9-hour show? Or
I was just talking about OIAs and stuff like that. There's actually a website. Because it's all public information, right? And so there's a website called fyi.org.nz that collates all of the requests and responses. And let me tell you, I do not want a job that deals with OIA requests for any organization or individual. There are some nutters that weaponize that process.
Like that, like what Fimboko is saying. That's pretty much all of them. Weirdos.
Yeah,
too much time on their hands.
Absolutely. Somebody asking civil aviation for a manifest for a particular Air New Zealand flight, specifically looking for chemicals and dangerous goods. And the CEA going, that has nothing to do with this.
Yeah.
Or people asking official information on how many known pedophiles in high society does TVNZ know about? 14.
Oops. I shouldn't have said that out loud. We're going to have to delete this video at the end of the night.
It's all right. It's in one of the emails that you sent to TVNZ anyway. So it's coming out.
Sure.
But yeah, it's like, it's an enormously useful tool for reporters trying to hunt down dirt. But it's also open to anybody that can slam together an email. So yeah, it's good times.
Good times. All right. I'm just wondering what order we do this in today. Maybe we start off with the story that Newshub seems to be running as an exclusive at the moment, and then we can go into the Debbie Ngawera-Packer, and then we can go into the protest. That feels like a natural path for us to go. So we reported this last night. It was an exclusive to Newshub. They came out with a leaked document from Cabinet that basically said Brooke van Velden, the Minister of Businesses and not Business Workers. Is that right? Minister of Business Owners is what it's called.
Wage slavery.
It was talked about in a document from the Cabinet that she was ignoring official advice. Now, what you're going to hear in part of the conversation today is, well, we take advice and then we choose whether we're going to listen to it or not. I mean, just to think about that, sounds like my 83-year-old grandfather going, well, the doctor said I should stop smoking. I've taken his advice. He can fuck himself. It kind of feels like that. It's like you would hope and think, I'm not being too trusting of government organizations, but most of the time, the official advice should be considered more than just, nah, we'll do it our way. And after my misogynistic take last night, Joe, you'll remember that. I know you were disgusted on the inexperience of the 31-year-old, any 31-year-old who's never had a real job, making these decisions. I did wonder through the night, I wonder how much of this is not coming from her, but I wonder how much of it is being driven from those above her and she's carrying it out. That sounds really disparaging, but I just had that wonder. That's all.
I also had a thought about it.
Yep.
And look, the advice that she got obviously ran counter to the Act's donations.
Yeah.
That's where I landed on that.
Yeah.
People have paid for something, Pat.
Yeah.
They want it.
Yeah, and they're not getting it with some of the things. The app tax being left on, those investors to the National Party aren't very happy. Others may not be. Let's have a look then at the story from Newshub tonight. This is the follow-up to last night's story.
An investigation has been launched into how secret cabinet papers about fair pay agreements were leaked to Newshub.
The Workplace Relations Minister today brushed off the leak and defended her decision to ignore official advice that removing the agreements would disproportionately affect women, young people, Māori and Pacifica. Political reporter Amelia Wade has more.
You should not be able to see these secret cabinet documents.
I have every confidence in my cabinet.
And yet, papers from one of their very first discussions about their plan to scrap fair pay agreements were leaked to Newshub.
What I have been informed is that MB have, on their own volition, started up an investigation, and it's good that they're taking it seriously and they're acting swiftly about it.
Notice at the moment, Chewy, no talk about the content of the leak still. I mean, I'm not saying there's not going to be any, but the focus tonight is on how dare there be a leak. Now, something I learned from this is it does actually sound like quite a lot of people get to see or have their hands on these papers. So Luxon might be correct. It may not be someone from within cabinet. And they do say that as a part of the investigation because, I guess secretaries or PAs or, the printer room, or there's a bunch of people, there may not be a printer room, but you know what I mean? There's a bunch of other people who may have access to them. So it may not be the cabinet. We kind of laughed a bit at that last night. Fair's fair. It may not be that, but it's still not a good look.
Cabinet papers are leaking. Is that a concern to you?
Look, there's an inquiry.
I don't think a laugh at that point is a particularly appropriate response. I mean, I wonder if that's a kind of like defense, like his or whatever to laugh at.
Very underway.
Is it a laughing matter?
Well, no, I just think, there are bigger issues than leaks of cabinet papers about fair pay agreements.
I agree. There are bigger issues like the content of the leak. That's a bigger issue. Why don't we talk about that?
No laughing matter for the Chief Executive of the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment, who told Newshub in a statement she's taking it very seriously and had commissioned an investigation into the possible source of the leak and will ask all agencies who had access to the cabinet paper to participate.
Yeah, so that's the thing that I'm like, I wonder how many of that is all agencies who had access to the cabinet paper. So just thinking how many people could have seen it. It may not be from the cabinet. I guess we shall see.
Well, look, it is disappointing, but I'm not going to speculate on how it's happened.
The two leaked documents revealed the minister is ignoring Treasury advice that because women, young people, Māori and Pacific peoples overwhelmingly work in low-wage jobs with poor conditions, they would be disproportionately affected by the repeal of fair pay agreements.
You want to know something? That footage is identical to the footage from the story last night. The reason I know it's identical is I've made a TikTok out of it. It is identical. I'm not saying that's good or bad, but it's interesting to know they just got the footage from last night and goes, and put it in the footage from tonight. Just an interesting observation. That's all.
Advice is advice, and the government is the government. I'm here, elected by the people, to do what New Zealanders voted for.
Does your government respect?
How do we feel about that, Chewy? What New Zealanders voted for?
Yeah, I noticed that turn of phrase, and yeah, I don't know. It's not overwhelming, and it's just this government for all people, even the ones that didn't vote for us, is what did it last? Like 3-4 weeks, and that was mainly the negotiations. And then as soon as they're up to something, they're like, "Get fucked! It's not about you."
This is a National Party promise, I think. Was the National Party were involved? But I am more and more interested. I don't know if it's this story or not, but one of the stories I looked at tonight talks about a lot of the heat that Luxon's getting is from the policies that are from his coalition partners. I think it's fair to say that if any one of those policies that either New Zealand First or ACT put through, you can't say that they are policies that New Zealand voted for. It's still fair that they won and they're allowed to implement them. But if you're a 7.5%, 8%, 6.5% party, then you can say that your voters voted for, but like if it's an ACT party policy, then and only ACT, then New Zealand First voters and national voters weren't voting for that policy. I don't know. I might be being a bit pedantic, but it just feels like kind of going, all of New Zealand wants this. You're like, well, yeah, no.
And look, I think that's a danger for any politician in any government to go, well, we're the government, so all New Zealand's voted for this. And it's not. It's like, if you're going to try something like this, fucking defend it. Like, explain to those overwhelming low wage earners why getting rid of fair pay agreements in their industry is a good thing for them. They're not going to, because they can't, but it's great for our donators. It's great for the guys that vote for us already, that employ those workers. That's why we're doing it. So shut the fuck up.
I also
Keep
think
working, troll.
I guess the point is they don't have to convince us now, do they? Because they're in power. So they don't need to come out and say, this is why we're doing it. They just need to go, well, we're doing it, which is true. And both whoever's running the country can do that. I just get a little bit sort of pissy maybe when people claim that this is what New Zealand wants, if it's an ACT policy or a New Zealand First policy, or even a national policy. National's got more right to claim that because they're a much bigger party. But, you know, in general, let's keep going with our hairless leader. Oh, I turned off the thing, didn't I? I turned off the sound. I'll go back a smidge.
Well, we take advice. We don't have to follow that advice.
We've got a cost of living crisis here. We have this evidence that fair pay agreements would help these people. Christopher Luxon needs to justify to New Zealand why he is repealing them.
The documents were also at odds with each other. The minister told Cabinet there had been consultation, but Treasury said there hadn't.
Look, I met with both Business New Zealand and the Council of Trade Union 3 days after being sworn into government.
At no point were we asked what we thought were the pros and cons of FPAs. We're simply asked, what are FPAs?
That's
So the consultation that she's holding on to was, we had a cup of tea with CTU. That's the consultation, rather than the consultation, as most of us would expect, would be we talked to the CTU about this. Never did that. But we had a cup of tea with them.
That's proper consultation to you.
I don't think that is a true and accurate representation of that meeting.
The relations between the unions and their new minister off to a less than stellar start.
There you go, Joe. Story number one. I'm intrigued that, and some of the text are saying that only TV3 covered this, when Newshub covered this tonight. I think this is a pretty big story. It's a pretty big story because it's a leak, but also from what was on that leak as well. And I guess if you package that up with the other things that happened today, a show of force from a minor party not happy, it's a very interesting day for the new government. Certainly no honeymoon period, is there?
No, not at all. And look, I think this is going to be Brooke's attitude towards low and middle income earners and dealing with the unions, which ACT has always had an absolute disdain for. They're going to get reminded pretty quickly what unions are capable of doing. And that's striking.
Yeah.
You know? So, bring it on. Join the union.
Yeah. Hashtag enjoy. There you go. Maybe the CTU should sponsor us next year. Maybe that's what we should do.
That'd be nice.
Go find some cash from them to keep this mofo running along. I get the sense now I'm going to go on a bit of a limb here, right? But I get the sense that many of the New Zealand First and ACT supporters have spent, shall we say, the last 2 years ignoring official advice, and that's now flowing on into the people who are representing them in Parliament. I mean, whether it's the Wellington, the little Wellington village that sprung up, but there have been a lot of people on that side of the political spectrum that have spent a lot of time ignoring official advice. So I don't know whether it's the chicken and the egg or the egg and the chicken, or whether this is just naturally. I know this sounds really disparaging, and I saw B talking about being 31 in the chat, and I'm not trying to be disparaging, but I do think, how can a 31-year-old be so confident as to know as much as this? Never been in a negotiation for a job, never employed anyone. As we saw last night, we're straight from university into sort of lobbying groups. To be so confident, to be so ideologically set, it's almost fascinating to me if it weren't so serious.
Look, I whenever we go down this track, I do hear the voice in my brain going, would we talk the same way about someone on our team?
I would.
So I do worry about that, because I know that that's what we'll catch flack on. But I think what you're talking about there is just like it's straight into, we were voted in government, we can fucking do what we want. Yeah, people can give us advice. I might not take it. There's better ways to say that. Yeah. Rather than what it comes across of as dismissive and arrogant. And I think we've had a lot of that already from a government that promised to govern on behalf of all New Zealanders, whether they voted for this or not. Remember, that was part of Luxon's victory speech. Yeah. And also promising to be one of the most transparent governments New Zealand's ever seen. And I don't know if leaking documents counts as transparency, but hey, look, that could get them across the line.
Let me answer your cutting words about would we say this about a 31-year-old on our side. If the 31-year-old was applying to be a rugby coach and they'd played rugby all through their teens, and then they'd gone to club rugby and they'd played club rugby there in their 20s, and they'd been the captain of the club rugby team at 25, and they'd been working with the coach, and then they'd sort of led their team and helped coach until they were 31, and then they wanted to become the coach, I'd be like, well, of course they're qualified. So my caveat would be, I wouldn't just say yes or no to criticizing the experience of a 31-year-old, but if you're going to be coming out making decisions based on what's best for business, and it's going to impact the workers, and you haven't done anything in business or been a worker that it's going to impact, yes, I will question your credibility as to being so confident about those decisions as opposed to being ideological. Is that a fair way to say it?
Yeah, well, I mean, the only reason I bring this up is because it's going to get thrown around.
Yeah, it's fine.
Maybe in our chat, maybe in other discussions, that classic whataboutism of like, oh, well, what if it was one of your guys? You didn't talk about this when Labour was in there, that sort of thing. And it is something that I think about, and it is something that Pat and I discussed. So just putting it out there.
It's not something we've talked about because I don't think we had this situation. I don't think we had the situation. I mean, Peter brings up Chloe, for example, 29, yes. Right?
Yeah.
But she comes with not just her ideological bent, which is obviously a big part of what she does, but she comes every time. Like we always talk about, she always gets into those interviews on breakfast and she goes, well, I was reading the latest international research as I was coming in, so it's like, so it's citing other people who may know better. And she seems to be a genius as to being a conduit to taking information and then applying it to her opinion. And I'm fine with that. If, for example, if Brooke was citing international practice and research and this economy that's done this under this kind of thing, rather than just going, it'll be better for business, I would have a different perspective. Look, I'll tell you something, and I said this to Chewy last night when we got off air. After I said, I love you, good night, sweetheart, because we always say that, I said, because people were talking about my conversation with Ian last night, right? And Ian Taylor, for people who weren't here. And I think for me, I'm probably different from Chewy in that I can handle speaking to someone who has a very different opinion from me, who maybe has an opinion that I am repulsed by. Being a broadcaster for 25 years coming up, 25 years, I have the skill to be able to compartmentalize my conversations with people. And I said to this to Chewy last night, I can disagree with you vehemently, but if you can show me how you got from point A to point B, from point B to point C, and that's the reason you have this opinion, I'm okay to saying I disagree with you vehemently, but I understand how you got there, and I accept that's what you think from getting there. So in other words, I could completely disagree with Brooke's position, right? But if she came out and said, well, this to this, and this to this, and the reason we're doing it is this, I might go, look, I can see how they get there. I don't agree with it because my research says this to this, and this to this, and this to this. Whereas what we're getting is just people going, business, better for business.
Yeah. There's no depth to it, right? So when it, like, again, using Chloe as an example, she is an incredibly effective communicator of some, at times, quite dense and complicated subjects.
For sure.
And that only comes easily to someone that is across it.
Yeah.
Like, has done the work. It's not talking points. It's not, look, this is just our position. And it seems like that's what we're getting from a lot of this government, is it doesn't feel like a group of people that are across their responsibilities. It definitely comes across as a group of people like, we have a goal.
Yeah.
We want to do these things. These are some of the things that we've spoken about in the election, because we promised that they're on our bumper stickers. But it's not something that they have the back, like, we're doing this because we know that it will do this, it will achieve this, it will benefit these people. And I think, like, it's either they do know who it's going to benefit, they just don't want to say it out loud, or they are trying to get to the end without having to justify it.
Yeah.
To back it up. And it's like,
Yep.
That's cool. You don't have to back this shit up as much when you're in opposition, because it's, the government says something and the media comes over and goes, so what do you think about this? And then you go, it's fucking bullshit and a sham. And if we're the government, we'll do something about it. And then the media toddles off again. And you go, wow,
Yeah.
fuck, I told them. But
Yeah.
you haven't had to go, this is how it works. This is the mechanics of it. This is why we think this way. The only one, yeah, we don't get that from these guys.
No.
And I think that's what's setting my teeth on edge is we go to Brooke and it's just like, well, we'll fucking do what we want because we're the government.
And just to wrap up what I was saying, because there's people in the chat saying, one person, we should do more like Pat. It's like, it's actually quite hard to do that. And I have to be honest with you, 99 times out of 100, people who I'm talking with or debating with can't do that logical thing, because what they do is they hear the headline from the front of the, if it's a religious talk from the front of the church, or if it's a political talk from behind the, whatever that's called, the podium, and they just repeat those talking points and they don't have any backing up to it. But I'll give you an example, right? There is I don't know names, and I'm not going to mention names, and I'm not trying to throw shade, obviously, and I almost hesitate to bring it up because it must be so painful. But we all know the story of the young plumber in Dunedin who died, who was one of the 4 deaths that they say could be linked to the vaccine. There's no one who said did, but they said could be linked to the vaccine. Now, his girlfriend, fiance, wife, whatever it was, if she comes out saying vaccines kill people, her experience is 100% of my partners died from the vaccine. I can understand her position. I disagree with it, but I empathize with her, and I would not challenge her on it because I understand how she's got there. And that's just how I operate. I'm not saying it's good or bad. Many of you might disagree with how I do it. I get yours. I've talked about an elderly person I used to know who had horrific things to say about Japanese people. When you delve into her story, her husband went to a Japanese prisoner of war camp and came back a different person. And so it's like, I understand how you've got to those opinions. I disagree with you. You know, I'm not ever going to join in on you, but it's that point where when she says those things, you just let them go, because I can see how you got there, and I haven't lived in your shoes. So that's just how I operate. I don't think it's how Chewy operates, and that's one of the reasons this thing works, you know? So, and I'm not saying either is good or either is bad. I just think that's how I function. And so I don't see in Brooke this whole conversation is the reason for why she's got to what she's got to, other than ideology. And that's why I'm not buying it for that 31-year-old. That's why.
Yep.
Is that enough? Do you want anything else? Share anything else in that?
Rob Burney here says, what a dumb thing to say. We're going to ignore advice from the experts because we're popular.
Yeah.
So popular. I'm one of the popular kids.
Yeah.
Dave here says a good comment. Less about the age, more about the lack of experience. I'm 33. I've been a union rep, been a worker, and been a boss, hired and fired people.
There
awesome.
You go.
I would
good
love
example.
your opinion on workplace relations.
Yeah.
You know,
and fair pay there. And fair pay agreements. Perfect.
Yeah, 100%. And Kooky with the early reminder, hit the like button.
There's a couple of super chats here, aren't there? Is there a couple?
Yep. JC stumbles in the door and says, "Sorry, I'm late. What have I missed?"
When you say stumbles in the door, I picture JC coming in hungover, still carrying a beer. That's what I visualize when you say stumbles.
The bus was late. My alarm ate my homework.
With the shirt on backwards and still in his undies. Right. Speaking of eating lunch, we weren't really, but I tried to make a connection there. Let's have a look at Debbie Ngawera-Packer. And I know I talked to you guys last night, said that she's going to come on at some stage this week. I'm still working on that. She said absolutely. Obviously, I had a busy day today. Hopefully, I'll hear back from her tomorrow and I'll keep you guys in the loop. So a couple of clips from this. In the first clip, Anna Burns-Francis there asks the question quite simply, what was the hikoi all about? And I think she asked Shane Jones that first and he didn't give an answer. And I thought we won't waste our time on that. Let's just go straight to Debbie and find out what the hikoi was all about.
What do you know? I think, first of all, I'm not surprised that the Prime Minister doesn't know what it's about or what Māori think. I don't think he's engaged with any, given the scale of some of the leaders presenting today. But what we have is a government that has offended at least 20% of the population, and which is surprising given the percentage of New Zealand First and Act don't meet that percentage. So, again, we've got Te Pāti Māori back in our whānau Māori. We have a large mandate of Māori. We are able to tautoko what's been said today, and it is a pushback against this government's anti-Māori policy platform.
Boom. So there you go. We now know what it was about, a pushback against this government's anti-Māori platform. We'll keep going on this because the next part of the conversation is a couple of minutes, and they started talking about this government, accusations that this government was the most racist government we've ever had. I don't know how that lands. I don't know the technicalities of that. I imagine governments in the 1850s were pretty fucking bad, but that's where this conversation is at the moment, and that's where these two pick up and the sparks start to fly.
Oh, look, it's theatre. A lot of the people that are participating,
is it theatre?
not only in this protest,
they don't have a right to back that up with something?
No, what I'm saying is that on October the 14th, everyone voted.
I love how Debbie's just looking at him. One of the things that we saw in this election when Debbie was on a debate stage with Marama Davidson, with Winston Peters, just calling him matua, kumatua, and they were just kind of referencing him like he's older than us, but he's a bit of a silly old roper. It's exactly the same vibe that's going on here.
And we've laid out our manifesto, and Debbie's a professional politician. I'm a professional politician. People have the right to protest, but know this from me. The Māori Battalion went to Greece. That's where the word democracy comes from. And they fought for the principles of liberty and freedom. And for this type of narrative that's coming from Debbie and Rawiri, where they advertise the protest with two cocked pistols. That is gross. It reminds me of what Sinn Féin did. Now, Sinn Féin, for a long period of time, refused to take their seats in Parliament in Ireland. Let's see how long Debbie and them sit outside.
Well, you seem to have a lot to say, Chewie. We'd like to jump in before we hear from Debbie.
What the fuck? Did he just go through the Māori Battalion to get to the Greeks inventing democracy?
Yep.
Wow. That's amazing. And then related to Pāti Māori to Sinn Féin.
Yeah. Talking about my people now, isn't he?
Absolutely. Out the gates. What the fuck?
It's an interesting conversation to talk about Sinn Féin. So I've told this story before, but I had second cousins in the IRA. Like, I never met them. But my mum would go back to Ireland and went back to Ireland. Like, I remember her going in 1988 because I went to Expo over in Brisbane and we met up there. I was just a wee shade of a lad. And the Sinn Féin which became a political party, and then Gerry Adams got some changes through. It was a pushback against, I guess, the British coming in and saying, this is our land and you can't come on. And like, whilst there was some horrific things, and I've told the story before about my second cousins, had gone through enough of a generation that they were just hating of the English because they were hating of the English. Lots of them had forgotten why. But they were a pushback against a government coming in to take over the land that they have. So I don't know if it's necessarily a terrible analogy, other than obviously all the car bombs, but just the spirit of this is ours.
I think it's a good analogy, just not in the way that he thinks it is.
Yeah, maybe that's it.
Like, because here he's saying, like, oh, Sinn Féin, they refuse to sit in Parliament and that sort of thing. They're a political arm of the IRA. So when they were outside of government, they were doing car bombings. So are they saying, is he saying that Te Pāti Māori should sit outside of Parliament and do car bombing?
I think what he's trying to say. I think what he's trying to say.
Skip that step and gone straight into Parliament.
No, I think what he's trying to say is they wouldn't even take the baubles of office. They sat outside. These guys are going to sit on the inside and get all the baubles. It's like, I think actually technically, I mean, when the Sinn Féin got into Parliament, as I said, under Jerry Adams, they were distancing themselves from the IRA action. Now, obviously, they were intertwined, but once they got to that point, it wasn't quite the same. But yeah, I guess Alan might have nailed it, is that he was comparing them to terrorists. But
yeah,
then,
it's so weird. Like, I might be jumping the gun a little bit here. A lot of people, and please don't go out and read comment sections on TVNZ news stories. There's some vile racist shit floating around. But what I see this protest as is straight out the gates, the government have come out with some stuff that is just, it's bad for Māori, just across the board. Anything to do with Māori, we're going to downplay it, roll it back, change the wording. It's all gone and it's all targeted at you guys. And what Te Pāti Māori have done is mobilized an enormous amount of people with almost no notice.
Yep, 100%.
Got them on the streets to say, this is how many people see this as a button issue, enough to get us on the streets. Look at all of us. And whenever you see a protest like this, you are not seeing all the supporters. You are seeing the people that either care enough to get out there or are able to get out there.
Well,
and if there's not a bigger signal in the very early days of the government to go, we're not on board with this, then I can't think of a better way to do it.
Like, speaking of TVNZ and speaking of, not that we were speaking of radio stations and talking about, what representation you see versus what there is. I know that they used to consider for every complaint that came in, it would be considered 7 people. So that would be 7 people who wouldn't complain. So therefore, you probably multiply that by a factor for how many people won't get out on the street. So if you see 1,000 people out there, that may represent 20,000 people, 10,000 people that if they would sort of thing. Anyway, let's keep going because Debbie is about to respond.
And I'm not surprised that Shane doesn't understand modern Māori art.
Okay.
Well, we've got a long period of time to have these debates and, we're professional politicians.
Well,
I put my credentials up along with my leader against anyone within Māoridom, and that's why we're in the government.
Now, we need to be really clear. And look, I understand that one classes himself as a professional politician for a certain genre, but the reality is we did not get, and certainly Shane and ACT did not get a Māori mandate. And that is something that we have been privileged and honoured to have. And we will heed the call of our people, unlike some who dine off their whakapapa, and we will continue to push that forward to this government. The kaupapa that we have is a government that has enjoyed the division and the fact that Māori don't have rights and interests, that we don't have inequities to address, and the fact that they're comfortable pushing us back 50 years is not going to be tolerated.
We're an economic nationalist party. And I can tell you this, Debbie trades on victimhood. And that has become the kaupapa of the Māori Party, which erodes New Zealand's unity and integration. And I'm all about putting that kaupapa out the back paddock.
And Debbie does not accept men who sit there and bully her and stand over her, and will never. And we are women who have now enjoyed our own views, enjoyed our own aspirations, and we will continue to push back against this type of misogynistic attitude that comes with old dinosaur politicians.
Well, look, we shouldn't allow these debates to degenerate into personal attacks.
Well, you did, Shane.
If you bring the kaupapa of victimhood, stand, be prepared to be challenged.
No. You are just used to bullying women, and you don't like the fact that I don't accept that. Never will, never have.
Okay. Booyah! Now, just apart from anything else,
I've been put in a small box.
I'm
in a little box. What have I done?
What was that dance? Big box, small
equality.
Box, apologies about that. Now, just one of the logical things, right? That Shane Jones was like, whoa, if we're going to, he didn't use these words, but start shouting nasty names at each other after he called them terrorists. Like, hello, let's just figure this out. There you go, Chewy. What are your thoughts?
I'm stunned that this is his first time meeting like a I don't mean this disparaging, a stroppy woman, because as far as I know, like New Zealand,
strong woman, better.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I just trying to form my words here. There are so many Māori women that would not put up with Shane Jones's bullshit anywhere on this earth, right? Yeah. And I feel like he has had a privileged life to get to his age and have not run into one. I love that Debbie's there.
Yeah,
I love that she's absolutely flaying this stuff. And one of the things that I absolutely love of this new iteration of Te Pāti Māori is that they are just dropping bombs whether people like it or not. I think people are seeing that authentic voice, and I think that it is not exclusively being received by Māori either. I think there is a large portion of young New Zealanders that see this and see the treaty as something that is important, that see the racism coming out of the government for what it is, and they don't want to stand for it. And if Te Pāti Māori can weaponize those people to get them involved in this process and turn around next election and go, this is why it's important. If you didn't vote last time, you have to vote this time.
Yeah.
I think if they can maintain, like they've come out of the gates with such power, if they can keep doing it. And I think the reason that we've had so many stories and so many comments from a range of government ministers, going from Christopher Luxon thinking it's all just not fair on him, to people concerned trolling the use of language and the logo that they used and all of this just pearl clutching nonsense, rather than seeing this for what it is. It's gonna be interesting.
It's going to be interesting. I agree. Very quickly, Anna Burns Francis reactions to Shane's dirty barnacles are gold in this interview. Yeah, a couple of times you saw the O face, being surprised.
She gives good face.
And also, just completely off the topic, but thanks for your super chat, $5 here. A noob's journey. Hey Pat, will you bring on Mike Stiles again to talk about national education policy? I'm dyslexic, and thank you for being a voice. Yeah, I mean, that will definitely be something that we continue on. I also want to say, I think this is our biggest live stream ever right now. People are looking in the chat, they're saying 300, but you guys can't see. We get the collation of all the things together. We're at 365. We're 35 away from 400. Maybe you guys can send out a tweet right now and say, hey, come join us. See if we can crack that 400 for the first time ever. Interesting, eh? Biggest live stream ever on a Tuesday at the end of the year. Thank you, Fano. We appreciate you. And for those of you guys who are watching this on delay or listening to it, we love you too. Do we love them more being in the live stream? No. We love you all equally. No one's our favorite child. We love you all equally. Parents have favorite children. Just put that out there to start with. I know I was the favorite. Okay, Choose Meister General. The other big story of the day, of course, was about the protests and about the opening of Parliament and how that all went together. So let's get back over to 6 o'clock News TV NZ and have a look about the protests in the Canberra. Is that the first one we're going to watch? Yep. How the protests affected the opening of Parliament.
And that activism was brought into the debating chamber by Te Pāti Māori at today's commission opening of Parliament. Party MPs doing their own unofficial swearing in before taking their traditional oath in a move that some have labelled narcissistic and others colourful.
So some have labelled it narcissistic. Chewy, you won't be surprised to know that's David Seymour. David Seymour has obviously changed his personal pronouns to be plurals because some have called it narcissistic. No, one called it narcissistic, just for clarity. But the other thing is, I think this is a really interesting question. Like in the olden days, you used to have to swear on the Bible to be, I swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help me God, in courts and stuff. You don't have to do that anymore. You can pick Quran, you can pick almost any kind of book that means something to you to swear on. I think there's a really valid question to ask. Maybe I'm not trying to stand up for Te Pāti Māori here. Maybe they're asking it in a more activist way, which is fine. But just in general, I think there's a really interesting question to ask about who we need to swear an allegiance to. You know, to this remnants of a monarch that has no real control over us. I mean, if they want to swear it to part of New Zealand, that I think it's an interesting conversation, Chewie. I think it's a really interesting one to start. Just like at one stage they wouldn't have even dreamed about swearing on a Quran in a courtroom or something, but that's now available. Same for Parliament. I don't see why this conversation wouldn't be how. I mean, David Seymour seems to love putting ideas out in public. They're just ideas for conversations, people. They don't mean it. We just want to talk about it openly and honestly. Isn't that the vibe we're supposed to put out? Isn't that right?
Yep,
right,
absolutely.
Let's have a look.
Editor Jessica Mackay report.
Hey,
The
Jess.
traditional pomp and pageantry for the formal opening of the 54th Parliament.
I, Christopher Luxon, swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles III,
his heirs and successors according to law.
But things quickly got less traditional.
That I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to our mokopuna.
The 6 Te Pāti Māori MPs swearing and signing up to their own oath before the official one.
We made it clear that we've had disdain with the current oath, and so we swore our own oath, how we think an oath should be sworn in Aotearoa. It should reflect Te Tiriti o Waitangi, but there also should be a commitment to our mokopuna.
And the co-leaders want it to be permanent.
There should be an option available. Yeah, we are tangata whenua.
It is preposterous that the Māori Party should think that they are the authentic voice for Māori New Zealanders.
Yelling out hoha, which means annoying or tiresome.
I remind everyone again, that party got less than 3% of the vote, and a lot of their party vote.
You need to be careful when you start saying that. And like, I remember dealing with a few YouTubers that were like, look at the views these guys are getting. It's not even worth talking to them. We're now eclipsing them. So you got to be careful playing the numbers game, because you know what? Labour and National could say exactly the same thing of you, Shane Jones. They only got 6% of the vote. So when you play the numbers game, at some stage, someone bigger and stronger can make the exact same argument about you. So that's why it's a weak argument, and it doesn't go to the substance of what they're saying. It goes to them basically going, because we're bigger, we're more important. I used to say that to people who were Fox News subscribers, and they like Fox News, and it was like, you know, Bill O'Reilly was the #1 show in the news form, and I'd go, yeah, but he's only got 1/10 the audience of SpongeBob SquarePants, so that means SpongeBob SquarePants is more important because he's got 10 million versus 1 million. It's a stupid game to play, Chewie. You want to chat to anything before I push play?
He does live in a pineapple under the sea.
That's true. SpongeBob SquarePants. All right. Ugh.
A lot of them were hippies.
It's narcissistic.
Again, that party got less than 3% of the vote, and a lot of their party voters were not Māori. A lot of them were hippies.
How much does that sound like old man shouts at the cloud? A lot of them were hippy dippy, drug smoking, flower loving hippie dipsters. Right, here comes our some people. Obviously, David Seymour has changed his pronouns.
It's narcissism. It's all about them when everyone else can be respectful of the institution that they have worked hard to be elected to. But I did notice that after all the theatrics, they still swore allegiance and signed up to make sure they get paid.
I actually don't pay much attention to him. Did he speak?
This is not theatrics. This is about our cultural identity and expression in this house.
I thought there was some flavour and colour to proceedings that sometimes can be less colourful.
There was also this play on words.
Kingi hare hare.
Hare hare has multiple meanings.
Oh, hare hare is another name for Charles.
And it also means scab.
Were you being a bit cute?
Oh, no.
Always.
Never.
Always.
Well, I can't help it, man, the way you're born.
But know this from me. I put my Māori language ability up against anyone in this house. And when I detect that the language is being used for cultural bullying, they're going to meet a bigger bully in the form of matua.
He's that old uncle that's not used to being told off by a younger woman.
There you go. And can I just say as well, maybe old Shane Jones needs to learn a thing or two. But to say you're going to be a bully, it's not actually, you know, like they say, it's like saying, well, if someone assaults me, I'm going to assault them worse back. Like you're missing. There's a bit of a point there. You're one hand saying bullying is not okay, so I'm going to be a bully. I just want to watch your messaging there. So just a thought.
It's just really weird. Like, oh, they've got to show respect for the institution. Do they? Do they? Do they have to show respect for the Crown? Have the Crown shown respect to Māori? Respect is earned. Like,
Yeah.
I don't see a problem with this. I'm someone that sees a problem with why our elected officials have to swear an oath to an old man on the other side of the planet, apparently chosen by God. That's a little bit weird for me. And like, when it comes to swearing oaths in this country, like, I know, like, if you are wanting to become a citizen of this country, you have to swear an oath to the king. That seems fucking weird to me. Like, why can there not be an alternative? There's an alternative if you go to court and you don't want to swear on the Bible.
100%.
So I don't see a problem with them swearing an oath to something that two things that seem a lot more relevant and a lot more important to this country, and for a politician to swear an oath to the mokopuna for the children that are going to come after them.
It's pretty cool.
I think is much more important, because it shows that they understand that the things that they're voting on have downstream effects, and including the treaty in this, the New Zealand founding document. Again, important. Old man in a big house, chosen by God, other side of the planet, less important to me.
I'm with you, but I guess I take a half step back and I go, I can understand it's been tradition to this point. And that's fine, right? That's been the tradition to this point. I'm not saying it's a good tradition or a bad tradition, but it has been. And now there is a group in there who want to ask the question, like people like David Seymour seem just to want to do all the time, just asking questions, nothing else. It's funny how all those right-wingers, especially see it in American media, we're just asking questions, and then when the opposition just asks questions, oh, hang on, disrespectful.
Very mean.
I think there can be the tradition to this point and a conversation about where to from here. So I'm not going to beat up on the past and say this is how it's been. Okay, sure, fine. Now there's a real case to be had. What do we do with this? How do we do this moving forward? Much like I've said, swearing on the Quran in the courts. Okay, so who can we swear to? Who can we pledge our allegiances to? Because I tell you what, even though people like David Seymour are saying that they've pledged their allegiance to the king, they haven't. If the king called on that allegiance for anything in specific, they wouldn't. So it's really all, you want to talk about theatre, Shane Jones, that whole process is theatre. So that whole process is theatre, so you could have slightly different theatre and it wouldn't make any difference, and make something uniquely New Zealand. And, even that whole allegiance, even that word, just swearing to an allegiance. So how are you going to uphold your job as an MP for the next 3 years? I think it's a perfectly valid conversation.
Yeah. Even if you look at Parliament as a form of government, as the traditions, the setup of it, we've taken a system from a country that's not ours, and we've used all of their traditions, all of their way of doing things. And so whenever we get a little bit of pushback or a change in tradition to reflect people of this country, it seems weird. And like Shane Jones has clearly put out. I don't know if he wants to wind the clock back to the true traditions, like powdered wigs and not having women in there.
Sounds like it.
It's just
one.
Like,
he doesn't want a particular woman in there, just one of them.
Yeah, because she's going to make it very difficult for him. I see Pāti Māori. Where did I see that comment? To Pāti Māori have the best strip. Yes, this is irrefutable every time.
Dope as fuck,
but
yeah.
Whenever you see them sitting there, and we talked about this with Rawiri pushing back against the rule on ties, and now they've got Taonga there. Every time I see them, I go, that's New Zealand Parliament. You could scrub all the information off that image of David Seymour reading a piece of paper off a book and go, where did this happen? And you could go any Westminster-based democracy in the Western world. But you see Te Pāti Māori and you go, that's
New Zealand.
That's New Zealand. And this is what these guys keep forgetting. They keep wanting to go, oh, we're all equal and we only want to use it commercial things. No, let's acknowledge the first people of this country and 20% of the population.
I'm with you 100%, and so is Kiwi Rascal. Rawari has sweet shoes, cool glasses, and awesome moko. And you put that super chat out, did you? Did we say thank you for the super chat when we put it out, Dave? Thank you for the $2 super chat along with your comment there. Okay, let's move into. I'm sorry, I'm kind of bopping around. I've got Eminem's Monster in my head because I saw the opening of the Chapter 5 of Fortnite, and Eminem did a concert as the opening of Chapter 5, and he performed Monster, and it's been going through my head for 2 days. Hey, let's actually now have a look at the. I should have played these the other way around, but I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. At the actual protest that was today, let's see what it was all about, and let's have a look at what the nation, certainly the North Island, but the nation saw today. This kind of the so-called 3% party, right? 3% party, kind of diminishing that what they can do with, I think, like 24 hours notice. I didn't hear about this till yesterday. Maybe it was more than that, but 24, 48 hours notice, what they can pull together. Pretty amazing.
The sound of resistance rising up and ringing out across the country. Whether on foot or on wheels, they came in their droves. Here in the capital, around 800 marched to the Beehive. The official opening of Parliament upstaged by protest rejecting the new government.
This government thinks that they can walk all over constitutional rights, and it's not what we're about. Being young rangatahi Māori and watching all of those proposals is pretty worrying for us.
Leave the treaty where it is.
On his morning coffee run, David Seymour was interrupted by some protesters.
Well, I don't think they're going to win people over. And I think, unfortunately, they've got a government that is proposing a dialogue. And yet these guys...
What was that, David? I'm sorry, what?
The thing about that is I don't think they were necessarily there to propose a dialogue or to convince anybody. Like he's looking at like an election. They're not going to win any hearts and souls. They're not going to win any votes. It feels like today was hey, we're here and we're going to be here for the next 3 years. Fuck you guys if you're not about what we're about, but just fair warning, we're here. Whereas of course, Seymour's all like, well, debate and think about and bring people over to your side. It's like that wasn't. I get the sense that that's not what today was about. Today was on some level a show of force and a show of we're going to annoy you guys for 3 years. If you think you're going to get an ounce of peace doing this kind of bullshit, think again. That's what I got out of it, Chewy.
I think I'm seeing a little bit reflected in the chat how I feel about it as well. Is the last couple of from the actual election result and finding out what these guys consider important straight out of the gates, it's pretty disheartening, and it's disheartening for me, a white guy on the left in the bottom of the South Island. I can only imagine what it's like to be Māori and be on the receiving end of this.
Yeah.
And it must feel pretty fucking amazing right now to maybe like people would have gone on this hickory not knowing how many people were going to turn up, because it was just put together so quickly.
Yeah,
to see that many people turn up, and I'm seeing comments like this in the chat saying that this is heartening to see this sort of response and people standing up for things that they think that matters. And I think that is my takeaway from this. That yes, it's a show of force, and it's a bolstering move.
Interesting with Claire's comment there. I didn't think about that. Think about what February 6th is going to be. That'll be a really interesting Waitangi day. Really, really interesting.
Who will duck out? Who won't go to Waitangi?
Yeah.
Who will find a reason to not go?
Yeah, really interesting. All right, well, we've seen some numbers. Let's keep going. The story's got a couple of minutes to go. We'll get a bit more of a sense of the overall day.
Our biggest city almost forced to a standstill as cars crawled at snail's pace along the Auckland motorway during peak morning traffic.
Like, the reason why I'm here is for her.
At Rangiriri Pa near Huntly, some of those caught up in the traffic didn't mind.
Also good, it's for good cause. Hey, for the Māori.
I'm all with Te Pāti Māori. I think it's really arrogant and appalling for the government, for any government to suggest that they should review the treaty in any way.
Do you know what I just thought? And I'm partly wrong in this, I know. But the sense, because I know the anti-vaxxers were saying, you know, they're doing it for the next generation. But what I got a sense of most anti-vaxxers was, I can't get my latte, right? And what I get a sense from this is, it is about the next generation. Now, I know some people will debate that with me because they'll be talking about, you know, their mythical vaccines in the next generation. But the general sense I get from that group of protesters is me. The general sense I get from this is them. Do you see that at all? Am I seeing that by myself?
100%.
All right, here we go.
Many non-Māori took part in today's action, including here in Wellington, as hundreds gathered on this overbridge.
If we don't stand up for each other at the times that we need to, we're going to be just like everywhere else.
And that's what you're saying, Chewy. And I've said this, look, I've been saying this on some level for 20 years since doing talkback and stuff. Really, the only thing that makes us unique to any country in the world, any Western colonized country in the world, is our fauna, our flora, our plants and our animals, and Māori. That's really it. I mean, like, you know, Australia does hot summers and on the beach for Christmas Day. So does South Africa. They like rugby. So, you know, like, it really is the only thing that separates us from the rest of the world. And I think that in itself is a treasure that we have to hold on to, which means perfect. No New Zealand culture without Māori culture. Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, I used to do this. I was shit stirring, but when I was doing talkback, it wouldn't be irregular, maybe once a year or something. You'd go, so define New Zealand culture for me. And they'd phone up and they'd say, oh, you know, summer at the beach with a barbie. And I'd be like, you mean like Australia? You know, and it's actually quite hard. I'm not going to say it's impossible. That would be arrogant, to find anything that's non-Indigenous that gives any credence to us being an individual country.
Mm.
And so I agree with that person. Anything, Chewy, or should I keep going?
No, keep going.
Here in Tauranga, along State Highway 2, the message was clear.
We will not be led down a path of erasure, and I think that's actually the fundamental point.
But back at Parliament, political leaders in charge argue the criticism is unwarranted.
What I'd say out here is I think it's pretty unfair, you know, to be honest. I think the reality is we're a government for a week.
Oh no. It's unfair. Christopher Luxury Man. I'm sorry.
I mean, is it kind of unfair, like iwi having land taken off them during World War II and a promise to give it back to them and then the government never giving it back? Is it as unfair as that? Or is it more fair than that? Or is it people actually participating in their democratic right, you fucking bald wanker?
We are going to get going to get things done for Māori and for non-Māori, and that's what our focus is.
That's why they got on the streets. They see what you're doing.
But they're trying to say that a government who stands for treating all people the same is racist.
Right. This is a lie that we're going to fight for as long as we do this. For a government that stands for treating all people the same. I know I've banged on about this year, but this government does not and will never, quote unquote, treat all people the same. The reason that David Seymour has this racist trope is because what he's saying is treating all people the same based on race. But even that's not true. All you need to do is have a look at how Māori are treated in the justice system versus Pākehā or versus non-Māori. And there's a different setup for both sides. Remember, race is a protected class. Human Rights Commission, race, age, religion, you know, there's about 7 of them. Disability, it's a protected class. David Seymour is trying to flatten the curve for race, or so he says, but he's happy for people not to be treated the same when it comes to age, when it comes to disability, when it comes to religion. So the reason that what he says, and I struggle to call anything racist, not anything, but this, but I am comfortable calling it incredibly racially charged. And what it does is it feeds racists. Without question, it feeds racists. So even that, right? The reality with making things equal based on race or treating people equal based on race, that implies as well that we've got the same starting point, which we don't. Many people think they've hit a home run, not acknowledging they started life on third base. So technically, if you wanted to make everything equal based on race, Māori would have to come up a lot, and lots of people who get a better slice of the pie purely because of their race would have to come down a bit. But they're not talking about that. They're just talking about, med school and that kind of stuff. This is all they're saying. Like Māori taking care of Māori in the health system. What are you talking about? And it's not true. We don't treat everyone the same. We never will, and we never should. I shouldn't be treated the same as someone with a massive disability who needs a park closer to McDonald's. They should have that right, that legal right, that right that has to go through government and local body to get that, because they need it. And there are plenty of Māori, as the stats would show, who need something from the government that they have a contractual agreement with more than others to help them actually flatten the curve. To flatten the curve means bringing Māori up. That would flatten the curve. And Seymour's just going, let's eradicate all of those, what he thinks are advantages. I remember this thing I always ask, Chewy, if Māori are so advantaged and if they're gaming the system so much, why are they on the bottom of all the societal stats? That doesn't make sense to me.
I know, because it's bullshit, Pat. Look, it sounds great, right? If you have someone without any context saying all people should be equal, that sounds great. Why wouldn't you be for that? He's saying equal. He's not saying, he's not talking about equity. And that's always my catch. He wants to draw a start line at one arbitrary point and go, see, like, we're all the same. It's not. He ignores generational damage. He ignores decades and decades of disadvantage pointed at Māori as soon as they got outnumbered by Europeans.
Yeah.
As soon as that switched and they went, wow, fuck it, we don't have to pay any attention to this document that we signed that we're just letting rats chew on now. It's irrelevant. There's more of us than you, and we've got the more guns, so shut the fuck up. So if he wants to talk about we're all equal, let's roll it back to that. And let's roll it back to the document that was fucking signed. This
the
is
one that
the
was
thing. Like,
the one that was signed by Māori as well.
Why is it suddenly like, all people should be equal? Okay, so can we have some government departments referred to by a Māori name? Well, no, not like that. You can be underneath. You can be the second name, the small name,
the suppressed
name in English, because there are more people that speak English than Māori, and we don't want that to change. We don't want to be actively mean to Māori and disadvantaged Māori. We just want to be passively mean and disadvantaged to Māori. We're not doing something as ugly as apartheid. That would be terrible. But there are two systems. It's just, and it's borne out, like you said, by every stat that counts. If you are Māori, you will get a worse sentence in court. You will get harsher treatment from the police. You will get doctors that do not believe you. You will get hospitals that aren't funded as well. You will get teachers that treat you differently from white students. So, you tell me where the advantage from Māori is. Whenever an advantage is brought up, it's some sort of redress to those things that I just listed. So fuck these people talking about equality. Like, it doesn't hurt me if Māori get more from the country that they live in.
And just remember, and I have said this before as well, I don't want to go on like a banging cymbal, but most people would agree that if my father was the richest man in New Zealand, I would have an advantage. If my grandfather was the richest man in New Zealand, I would have an advantage. If my great-grandfather was the richest man in New Zealand, I would still have an advantage. There's almost no challenging that, right? But what they're not prepared, people like David Seymour are not prepared to accept is if my father was the worst treated person in New Zealand, I would be impacted by that. My grandfather was the worst treated person in New Zealand, I would be impacted by that. If my great-grandfather, so it's very easy to see and accept that if wealth's in your family, it would flow on. But when you're talking about harm, that flows on as well. And that's, I think, the education. And I guess I'm sounding arrogant like I've got the answer, but to me, that feels like the education that some of these people need to know about intergenerational harms and intergenerational ills. Just like the positives can flow through, so can the negatives. Right, let's get to the end of this.
John, for a long time yet.
Kia ora, Mikey. Plenty of action today, but what happens now?
Te Pāti Māori is promising this is just the beginning, not just one single hikoi, but a marathon of protests over the next 3 years. Remember, Te Pāti Māori won 6 of the 7 Māori electorates. That was not by accident. They have a majority behind them in terms of Māori, and they will want to make that count. They also have some big iwi leaders behind them. That's why we saw some big numbers out in protest today. Remember, that is no small feat, given that they are the smallest party in Parliament at the moment. On the other hand, of course, you have ACT and New Zealand First. They will not back down from this fight. They fought hard for their policies on reo, on treaty and on race during the election campaign, and they will not walk away from those easily. Alongside the National Party, of course, they also won the majority support from the public to implement those policies. Now, the big challenge for Christopher Luxon is this. This could well tarnish his legacy as Prime
Preach, Mikey.
Minister. He will not want that, especially when a lot of the more extreme policies that were criticised today belong to his coalition partners.
Preach, Mikey. That is absolutely true. Will that be enough, though, to help keep some of this in check? At the moment, it doesn't look that way. Right. Let us say one thing before we wrap up for the night. I think it would be nice to get back to number 1 in the podcast charts. We've been hovering around number 2, 3, and 4 for the last little while. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to just suggest to people, if you felt so inclined, maybe for the rest of this week, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you could download our podcast on Apple Podcasts, right? Just go to Apple Podcasts, it's scrolling along the bottom of the screen at the moment, and look up #BHN. Have a listen to some of the clips from the last few days. Have a listen to the podcast tomorrow morning. Put it on in the background while you get it up. I think it'll be nice to wrap up the end of the year, not only with the New Zealand Podcast Media Award, New Zealand Podcast Award, but also another number 1 in those charts. Just a little throw out to you guys to see if you might be interested. And if you haven't subscribed, also a bit of a reminder that maybe you could subscribe. And while you're there, you could rate us and you could review us, Chewy.
That sounds good activities for the whole family.
Yeah. All right. Anything else you want to wrap up with? I feel like we've had a pretty good show.
Yeah, no, look, thanks, guys. Look, I sometimes I get a little bit ranty, and then I look over at the comments and people cheering me on. I love it. Thank you. But look, I think it's a really important thing for Māori to see that they're not alone in this, and that there should be some Pākehā people backing them up. We know that there's people that do. We know that the modern face of New Zealand is not Shane Jones, is not Winston Peters, is not David fucking Seymour.
I didn't know that was his middle name. Is his middle name fucking?
It's twerking.
Yeah.
The
mystery of twerks.
I think back 20 years, 15 years, the way that we look at Māori now has improved. Like, we have made steps forward, and I think this is why we're seeing this, that people don't want us to go backwards. The amount of people that I've seen going, why are they changing the name of Waka Kotahi? Like, is it any different from any of the other weird names that we've called our government departments? People learn, people adapt. Like, that's fine. Like, we've done it now. Just leave it as it is. They can see through this bullshit, and it's not important to the majority of people. Like, if you distilled it down to maybe 2 things. People voted for a change in government because we tend to vote for a change of government and after 2 terms, and people wanted a change, and they might have wanted some tax cuts, but you can't go, all of the people that voted for us want all of our policies. So don't pretend when you get pushback to be fucking shocked Pikachu face over the whole thing.
Shocked Pikachu face.
And that's my story.
All right, guys, lovely to be with you. I see Bomber's last podcast of the year has just uploaded. I would encourage everyone to go and support the ecosystem we're in. Bomber's a great dude, and he loves to speak to people. And so that is on. I'm looking at it right now, up on what's it called? YouTube, Tubing the Tube. So you could all go check that out in the next couple of days. Throw him some love as well. And other than that, you can throw us some love tomorrow night from 9 o'clock when we come back for another edition of Big Hairy News. I'll email Debbie again tonight. I heard from her last night. Maybe the email went into her kind of PA's inbox today. But I'll email her again. I'll do my best to get her on by the end of the week. And remember, for those of you who are interested, the Ian Taylor interview will be played in its entirety on Friday night at 9 o'clock. It'll be as live, so we won't be here, but it's 47 minutes. It's basically a full episode, and we'll put it up then. And if you are a patron, love you to bits, then you can see it on Patreon right now. All right, that's us. We're done. We're dusted. Think of me tomorrow all afternoon, packing hoodies and t-shirts, people. I'll give you an update tomorrow night. And apart from that, I'm done. I'll see you next time. Hooroo.
Mā te wā.